Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pete Gilley, who's former chief pilot at Western Helicopters when it was located at Rialto, California. And this is the story of one of my serious accidents for which I take complete credit. But it's a testimony to following procedures and not following procedures and flying an airframe that is so strong and tough that I'm here today to share this with you. This goes back to a flight made in the mountains you see behind me here in the San Bernardino Valley. And it was a routine check of markers, aerial markers for the Seven Oaks Dam project. 62 markers that have to be checked once a month from the air to be sure that they're still in one piece, properly aligned. These are white X's that are filmed from high-flying photographic airplanes once a month and logged by the Corps of Engineers to be sure the earth around the Seven Oaks Dam has not shifted since the last photos. On this particular flight, there were 62 markers to fly over very slowly, low level, at various points in the mountains you see behind me here. It was routine. Normally, I had the senior surveyor, and by the way, what are we flying? An MD 500D. 500D, the first helicopter that our company ever acquired as Western Helicopters Incorporated. Anyway, in the right front seat is the senior surveyor. Behind me on the left rear is the fellow who got out and repaired any of the targets, aerial targets that needed repair, having been disturbed by animals, winds, whatever. On most of our flights, nobody occupied the right rear seat, but on this flight, the senior surveyor asked if his son could go along to see what his dad did. And I very blithely said, sure, we have the empty seat, so forth. And the surveyor asked if the right rear door could be removed so his son could get a good view as we slowly proceeded for the next hour checking all these targets. Certainly, go ahead, we removed the right rear door. The left rear door was already removed for the many landings I would have to make, many of them no skid or one skid, for the fellow in behind me to get out and repair targets. So I had no back doors on. I had both rear seats filled. Senior surveyor in the front with his door on because he had a huge map of the terrain and would check off the targets as we would inspect each one. My door was off on my side so I could see making challenging landings that were involved in many of the spots. Often we couldn't land. It was a hover thing entirely. Anyway, this was routine, and I was very comfortable having done this for a long time, well over a year at least. So we're flying. We've got 2 or 3 targets remaining to be inspected down in the valley, down in the Santa Ana River Valley, that are all part of the project. So I am flying along westbound over the ridges behind me here, and I very smoothly lowered the collective a little bit to start a descent into the valley in front of me. When I did that, and the aircraft yawed a little bit to the left, just normal descent wiggle, the hoodie sweatshirt from the right rear passenger, because it was cold that morning, cold and foggy when we started. And the young passenger in the right rear had a hoodie on. He took it off during the flight and just put it under the rear seat, which is unobstructed from one side to the other. As I started descending and the ship yawed a little bit, air came in the right rear seat, blew the hoodie out under the left rear seat, immediately back into the tail rotor. There's no horizontal stabilizer in the MD-500 series. There is one, but it's up on top of the tailbone. And in this case, there was nothing between the switcher deporting the aircraft and contacting the tail rotor. The sudden shock of that happening caused the tail rotor and the gearbox to immediately leave the aircraft. And this was witnessed by all the workers that were at the Seven Oaks Dam construction. Many of them saw the tail rotor depart the aircraft and watched the accident happen. And of course I thought, okay, something's happened. I didn't realize the hoodie was involved, but I don't have any yaw control. The senior surveyor weighed well in excess of 250 pounds. With the loss of the tail rotor gearbox and the tail rotor itself, I had a CG problem instantly. And the nose dipped, and I was applying aft cyclic, full aft cyclic to maintain almost level flight. Now, in front of me were power lines, the transmission lines coming down the Santa Ana Canyon, and lower distribution lines. There was no place to go, and as I like to say from a country song, no way to get there. I had my work cut out for me instantly. Had I proceeded forward, I would have tangled up with the high tension lines, and I wouldn't be here sharing this story with you. So I made the decision, and when something like this happens and you have no obvious thing in front of you like a runway with clearance to land, proceed as requested type thing. No, this is a sudden emergency where the flying ability of the helicopter has been seriously compromised. There's no way you can maintain level flight. You have the power, but you don't have the yaw control. And with the doors off and no tail rotor in the back, it would be impossible to proceed normally, and I would have to climb over wires that were ahead of me. So the decision was made to stop on the side of the mountain, bring the aircraft to a stop with whatever power it took, which of course meant the aircraft started spinning to the right. And I chose a spot that appeared to be 100 feet below me, and it appeared to be almost level on the south-facing slope of the mountain behind me. Thinking I'm right over the place I'm going to land and walk away, I brought the aircraft to a stop. It started spinning once per second clockwise. I had full aft cyclic applied. I could not have applied the cyclic any farther back. It was in my belly. The weight of the surveyor was not compensated by full aft cyclic. I spun to the right, descending vertically with the aircraft and full aft cyclic, but descending vertically. Spun, the witnesses estimated 6 complete revolutions. As I felt the ground contact of my supposedly level landing spot coming up, I applied full collective, full pitch, and I remember feeling the rate of turn increase momentarily, and then we hit. We hit on about a 20-degree slope, which is what looked level from 100 or 200 feet up, hit on a 20-degree slope, and the MD-500 disintegrated right then and there. Blades, tail boom, everything gone, except the part of the fuselage the 4 of us were sitting in. Everything disappeared. There was no glass. And I didn't know all the outer pieces of the helicopter had gone too. This was too big an event, indescribable noise at the crash site. And because I had pulled full pitch prior to contact, nobody had any injuries, back injuries or anything else at that time. So what happened then? Here I'm sitting in the left seat, pilot seat, holding onto the cyclic and collective. And what's left of the aircraft, we start to roll down the mountainside. We are right at the upper end of a canyon, and the aircraft makes a roll to the right, and then another roll to the right. And now we're going through high brush, small trees, stuff's happening, blam, 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 blam. I'm just sitting there holding onto the controls. I'm still flying, pedals, collective, cyclic, everything's fine. Everything's great. We rolled and rolled. The side of the canyon got steeper coming this way, coming southbound. And it was a long canyon. I get a brief view of it, and then I'm in the brush. I'm getting swatted by stuff. We're rolling through all this small brush and small trees as the slope got steeper and steeper. And then suddenly the aircraft stopped. Stopped upright, facing south. There was no noise, no fire, nothing happening. The two backseat guys both bailed out and started climbing back up the canyon so they could alert the people at the dam way down below that we had a 911 and would they send appropriate rescue stuff. So in the right front seat, here's the senior surveyor. His hip has dislocated, so he's in pain, but he's fine. Well, of course, being a highly trained pilot, I'm going to turn off the battery and then pull the fuel off and all. I reached to the instrument panel to do that, and there was no panel. The panel was completely gone. Flat floor, completely gone. The panel in the rolling had been completely ripped and was underneath the aircraft, upside down, underneath the aircraft. Well, there's no way I could shut anything off, pull any fuel valves off me. Nothing was there. There's nothing in front of me, nothing. So there's no smoke, there's no fire, there's no sound, just the sound of silence. And still can hear my two rear seat passengers crashing through the brush trying to make it up this very steep slope that we had just rolled down with everything bent toward them. This turned into an excuse for every television helicopter, every helicopter in Los Angeles involved with news gathering came out, and we had the equivalent of World War III for an hour to 2 hours over the scene as aircraft circling, making videos, news at 10 type stuff. And there we sat. I did not attempt to leave the wreckage site because of my injured passenger. I wasn't going to move until somebody came to rescue him. San Bernardino County's Huey was out of county on a training mission that morning, and they were not available for immediate response to the crash site. So I sat there in the sunshine with nothing but the remains of the helicopter and my senior surveyor. We sat there for a long time until the Huey showed up from Rialto with a hoist. Paramedics lowered down to the scene, rigged the passenger for a lift. Up they went, and they disappeared. That left me alone in the wreckage, not being able to see anything beyond nothing that I was sitting in. So I began walking up the same way it would come down, and I'm picking up things like my pen and pencil, notes, things that had flown out of my pocket on the way down, my lunchbox, all these treasures I'm picking up as I'm climbing uphill through the broken trees and brush. And I got up to the crash site and looked, and it was indescribable. There were rotor blades and plaques and stuff everywhere. The tail rotor, by the way, has never been found, although it's been searched for years. It's up there somewhere prior to the crash site. A sheriff's helicopter finally spotted me as I'm going to make my way down to the dam site. And they came in and did a one skid and picked me up halfway down the side of the mountain. And the rest of it is on TV, was on TV that night. Anyway, that's the story. How did this happen? It was my fault. We had a drill with the Corps of Engineers. They had a safety drill, safety. We had safety meetings, safety briefings. Everybody that flew in that helicopter with me briefed on don't do this, don't do that, and all, except I did not brief the young passenger that morning. And he innocently took off his hoodie and put it under the back seat. And with the doors off in the back and a little bit of a yaw, it blew out, and the rest is history. The aircraft was not rebuildable at all. It was totally wasted. Everything was gone. In the next few days, the wreckage was hauled off the mountainside. The site was cleared up, cleaned up. A lesson was learned. The lesson again is don't skip something like that. If I briefed the passenger, it wouldn't have happened. So it was my oversight. I take full responsibility for it. I give great credit to MD Helicopters for building a airframe that has saved my life countless times in the 41 years I worked with Western Helicopters. Thank you. If I briefed the passenger and told him, take off your hoodie and hand it to us in the front, we toss it down in the bubble where it's safe, there's no wind. That's our storage area for lightweight things like clothing that you take off while you're flying.